Good morning, friends. Welcome to a Lovely Yarn podcast. My name is Amber, and I am actually filming in my garden today. It is Tuesday, May 30th, and it's a beautiful day. This time of year, I really have a hard time being inside, so I try to stay outside as much as I can. And so when I thought about filming a podcast today, I thought it's beautiful. I'm gonna just do it outside. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning and already it is warm enough to wear a sleeveless shirt. It's amazing. We're supposed to have temperatures in the high 80s, near 90s Fahrenheit. So it's gonna be a warm one this week. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I say this often, but I don't anticipate this to be a very long episode. Just because I have been really busy with things other than knitting. I haven't been knitting as much, which is very typical for me this time of the year. I'm a big gardener, and my family and I like to be outdoors, so knitting it's not as high of a priority for me this time of year, but I have been doing some things. I have a finished object. Actually, I have several finished objects, and that's because some of them are smaller. But let's just get right into it. So, the first thing I want to share with you guys is the Seaborn Tee, and this is a pattern by Herb Garden Knitwear. I finished it, I forget where I was in the process last podcast episode, but here it is. I posted a picture of it on Instagram last week, which I will put in right here so that you can see how it fits me. And there are a few I want to knit this pattern again, but there are a few adjustments that I plan on making because I didn't take certain things into consideration when I was knitting this, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But it is a really nice finish, and I've mentioned before how the little bottomed scallops, this pattern calls for a tubular cast on, but I did not do that. This was a 5 cast on attempt project. In other words, I casted this on 5 times before it finally stuck. And I discussed that in further detail in my last podcast, but essentially I just couldn't get the cast on right, and the tubular cast on circular needles kept twisting on my cable, and I had my stitches all twisted up, and I thought, forget it. I am not going to worry about a tubular cast on. And so I just did a regular cast on. And I would do the regular cast on again because I don't mind doing tubular cast ons, but whenever I have to mess around, keep ripping out, it's not worth it to me. And I think that this, it still looks really nice. I wouldn't look at this and think, oh, that doesn't look right. So I'm glad that I just, in the future, I will save the hassle and the heartache and just do a regular long tail cast on when I knit this again. So I used Belle for this t-shirt, and the main color is Almond Rose, which is color number 23. The contrast color is number 17 of the Belle. Did I say I used Belle? I think I did. And it is the Petrol colorway. One thing I wish I would have done differently is I wish I would have knitted the Petrol the whole way across. The front, this is the front, before I started the bind off for the neck. Just so it would have had a finished strip the whole way across there, or stripe the whole way across. That is one thing I would do differently. I knit this, I think pretty much to pattern. Let me grab my notes so that I don't forget anything, because there is the potential for me to forget. I did make a few notes about this knit. This little knitting journal is actually coming in quite handy. I've gotten fairly good at keeping track of stuff in here. Okay, so I knitted the size B7, but again, I think I mentioned this in my last episode that I started with the B8, and then I got, I started with the B8, and then that was one of the reasons I ripped out my cast on, because I worked on it quite a bit, got I think the whole way through the scallops, or at least a good portion through, and I looked at it and thought this is going to be too wide. So I ended up doing a B7, which I think is the second size. Okay, I knit this on size 5 US needles, And I've used Drops Belle enough now that I know that my gauge with this yarn on size 5 needles is 20 stitches to 4 inches for the row. And I think that was the gauge. I think the gauge for this pattern was 20 stitches. So I knew I didn't even gauge swatch because I've knitted it enough. I've knitted enough with the Drops Belle to know that. So yeah, let me tell you now what. So I love this t-shirt, but it doesn't fit me the way I was hoping. And I think that that is partially my fault because I didn't follow my gut instinct, which when am I going to learn? When am I going to learn to follow my gut instinct, right? Okay, so the main problem comes with the armholes. Can you see how little that looks? So this is knit from the bottom up, which I actually prefer top down. I don't really like bottom up. I've talked about this before. I like to be able to try on my shirts and my sweaters as I knit them to make sure they fit well. But it's knit bottom up, and when I got this length the way that I wanted, and basically how I did that was I looked at people's photos on Ravelry and I counted how many sections of the main stripe. I counted that. I know this isn't really the best way to do it, but that's what I did. And then I thought, oh, I like how that looks and where it hits on her. And I know that the reason that's not a real great way to do that is because it's not very accurate, right? Because everyone has different torso lengths and stuff, but that's what I did. So I stopped when I got to that certain point, and then you work the shoulders, okay? Like this middle section and the shoulders, okay? So like you work up to the arms and then you do this. As I was knitting up, I knit as far as the pattern said to knit, and then you seam the shoulders, I think. Gosh, it's funny how I forget stuff, and I honestly haven't. It wasn't that long ago that I finished this. But when I finished this up, like knitting up the body to the length that the pattern said to do so, this length here where my armhole was going to be I looked at and I thought that does not look like it's deep enough, and I should have kept knitting. I should have stuck with my gut instinct and not just followed the pattern, because I can't remember if I checked my gauge this way, like vertically. I can't remember if I checked that, so that could have been part of the problem. But also I should have just known better. For as long as I've been knitting, I should have known this needs to be longer. So that is a problem. When I put this shirt on, it's very tight in like the arm. So because of that, once I get it on and get everything adjusted and get it into place, then I get used to it and it doesn't feel like constricting or tight, but it does feel, when I first put it on, it's quite uncomfortable. So when I reknit this, I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to knit this longer. Also, if I would have knit the size up, the size that was actually for my bust, maybe that would have helped. I don't know, because I like how it fits me around my body. It's just super tight right here. And then another interesting thing about these sleeves are that they are knit in pieces, and then they are actually seamed on as well. So you're not picking up stitches here and knitting down, you're actually knitting this whole thing up, and then once your sleeve is complete, you do a set-in sleeve and you cast off the two. Like these shoulder seams are all on waste yarn, and then you're seaming them and binding off together. So that's how you do your sleeves. Is that making sense? And again, it has that pretty shell or scalloped detail along the edge. And the pattern is well written as far as like describing the different stitches. It's a very long pattern. I forget how many pages there are to it. It's multiple pages long. And it provides written instructions for the scallops as well as charted instructions. I'm usually a chart person. I like charts because to me they're easier to keep track of where I am in the pattern rather than reading through a bunch of written instructions. However, I will say that I believe I found a couple of mistakes on the chart. So keep that in mind if you knit this. I could be totally wrong. I thought it happened on the body scallops, and then I am positive it happened on the sleeve scallops. So keep that in mind if you're knitting this, that there are a couple of things that do not match up with the written instructions for the scallop. And so I was able to figure that out just by reading my knitting and then looking at the written instructions, because when I was using just the chart I thought that doesn't seem right, and then I looked at the written instructions and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's written the way that I'm thinking it should be, it's just not charted the way that I'm thinking it should be. So that is just something to keep in mind. I was really concerned about the petrol yarn colorway bleeding, because if you can see here, it is a very bright, vibrant teal color. So I threw 3 color catchers in my little bowl of cold water with this. I don't think I used any wool wash. I think I just did cold water, and I kept a close eye on it while it was soaking. And then I was also concerned about it bleeding like onto the other layer of fabric as I had it blocked. So I was really careful about that, but it didn't bleed at all. And one of my viewers actually last time said, hey, be careful, I've heard that particular colorway bleeds a lot, but I didn't experience that at all. I don't have any bleeding, so I'm really thankful, because I was a bit nervous about that. And then I just watched the Fruitful Hands, one of their most recent episodes. Diana, is it Diane or Diana? I'm sorry if you're watching. I think it's Diana. She knitted a sweater that she experienced major bleeding, and it was so sad. And so that was fresh on my mind when I was blocking this. But mine turned out fantastic. No bleeding, so that is great. So yeah, that is my Seaborn tee. And like I said, I'm going to knit another one. I think I'm actually going to do it in a solid color. I have my Barocco Remix Light, which is, I believe, a sport weight. So this is a DK weight yarn, the Drops Belle. But I'm going to do a swatch and mess around with the gauge. And I think this would be nice, because that Remix Light is like the color I have is like a charcoal color. So I think that would go well. It's funny because, and I hear this a lot, but the stuff that I actually wear, the knitwear that I make and I actually wear, are the pieces that are more neutral and timeless. So they may not be as fun to make because there may not be as much color variation or texture, but they are the pieces that are most practical in my wardrobe. So, oh, I did write in my notes that when I knit this again, I want to make it a tad bit longer. It is pretty cropped. And I plan on wearing this over dresses, so that's not a big deal. But if I wanted to wear this over a pair of jeans, I feel like there is the potential that my belly would show, which I'm not, like, that's not comfortable for me to wear. So I do want to make it longer the next time I make it. Okay, my next finished object is just a little pair. I don't think I showed these last time, did I? I was trying to remember if I did, but I don't think. Did I show you guys these? Maybe I did, so maybe I shouldn't talk much about them. But they're just a little pair of Shortie Socks. I did 15 rounds of 1x1 ribbing. No, I'm sorry, 2x2 ribbing, 10 rounds here, and then the heel flap and gusset, and then the regular foot with the Kitchener stitch toe. And this is perfect. I have another pair of Shortie Socks that I made last summer, and they are just like 10 rounds of ribbing, and then I went right into the heel flap and gusset, and they're okay, but these fit better. They feel like they stay up on the foot better. So this is probably, I'm gonna probably do something pretty close to this anytime I make Shortie Socks in the future, as far as like the counts and stuff. So I made note of that in my little journal, so that when I want to make another pair of these, which I already am, and I will share about that in a little bit, I will have that. I don't know what color yarn this is, but I will link it down below, because I think I linked it on my last podcast episode, so I'll just relink it down below so that you guys can look it up if you're interested. Okay, then the next two items I have to show you are for my home, and they are purely practical, and they are two different pot holders or hot pads because I need them. Mine, the ones I have currently are just ones that I bought at the store. You know, they're just your average quilted, not nicely handmade quilted. I'm just talking about like something that you would buy at a regular store. And they're looking pretty grungy because I've had them for a while. So I was watching a new to me podcast, and I'm going to share more about her in a little bit, but I will mention it now. Josie Joe Creates, and like I said, I'm going to talk about her podcast more here in a little bit because I really enjoyed it. But she was making, okay, where did my slip go? She made one of these, and this is a Pearl Soho pattern, and this is the double thick pot holder by Pearl Soho. It is a free pattern, and let me show you both sides. So it is knit in the round, and so you knit in the round, and then you do this thing where you seam up one side and then you kind of fold it down in itself to make the square, and then you seam it shut. Okay, so you do have like multiple seams on it, and then you just make this easy thing at the top, which you wouldn't even have to, but I kind of like the idea of that. Now, one thing I did notice when I was finished with this is it's fairly flimsy. I was hoping it would be a little sturdier. I don't know if that had something to do with my gauge, although I will say that, you know, this is just like the cotton yarn, like the Lily, is it? Just that stuff like you can buy at Michael's or Joann's, the Lily yarn, I think it is. And you can see it has quite a bit of stretch, and I'm thinking it's because of the needle size I used, which I used a size 9 needle, and I don't remember if that's the size that the pattern called for, or no, I used a size 8. Now I don't honestly remember what size I used, but I think if I were to knit it again, I would knit on a smaller needle because it's a little too stretchy for me and a little too like flimsy. I mean, I'm assuming it'll protect my counter from like hot stuff, but I don't know. If you can see, it's all open in the middle, so it is a bit flimsy. Making this reminded me of how I don't really care to work with that kind of cotton craft yarn. It hurt my hands, it did. I've been using a lot of cotton blends, which have been perfectly fine and they don't bother me at all, but this stuff is like truly so stiff and dry on the hands, and so you're going in a circle to get the garter, so you're knitting around and then you're purling around, and you just continue that, and the purling is what really bothered me with this. So I finished this one up, and I wanted another one, but I didn't want to have to purl. So now this is more of what I was going for. See how stiff that is? I just did this as I went. I held 3 strands of the same cotton yarn, just in different colors. I held those together. I casted on 20 stitches across, and then I knit until it looked like a square. And then I used the same concept. I did this loop the same way as I did this one. Now, did this hurt my hands? Kind of, but because I didn't have to purl, I didn't notice it as much, and this literally went so fast. I knit this up in maybe an hour, where this took longer than that. So I want to make a couple of more of these just because mine really are nasty and need replaced, and so I will do it this way. This is the method that I will use because it just feels more stable, and that's what I was going for. I probably will make a couple of these also to put in my camper because I don't know that I have any in my camper, so that would be a good thing to have as well. Okay, so that is all on my finished objects. Now let's talk about what I'm working on. I have 2 projects that I'm actively working on, and the first one is another pair of Shortie socks. So let me show you the first one, which is finished, and this is just purely using a leftover scrap yarn. So this, I'm using Knit Picks Stroll Tweed, and I think it's Espresso Heather. This is Espresso Heather, and it's their Tweedy line of Stroll. I'm using that for the cuff, the heel, and the toes. And then this yarn, this self-striping yarn that's in the middle, is something that I don't know, because I use this, I knit a pair of these socks up, like in this yarn. I knit a regular length pair of vanilla socks in this yarn probably 4 years ago for my daughter, and I didn't keep the tag. I just threw it in my bag that I keep with all my scrap commercial sock yarn. And I really like this. I've always liked this yarn for some reason. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of brown. Like, I hardly have any brown, but I love having the pink, the yellow, and this rusty orange in there as well. So for some reason, this just makes me happy. So I thought, I'm going to make myself a pair of shorties. And the only thing I did differently between this and the other pair that I showed you guys is that I did 12 rounds of the 2x2 ribbing, and then I did 10 right here of like stockinette before I started the heel. So I just made this portion a tiny bit shorter. So only by like 3 rounds, but I thought I would try that and see how that fits. And so, I mean, I like it. I tried this one on my foot and I like that a lot. And then the second one is not very far. I haven't gotten very far with this. Oh my goodness, I got all these ends. So I'm just getting ready. I finished up the leg, the ankle portion of this, and I'm getting ready to I need to start using the brown tweed to do the heel flap. So that's what is happening next on that. And I, as with almost all of my socks, I knit them on 9-inch circulars, Chalgu. I love these. I love them. And then I use the double pointed needles as well to like close up the toe and stuff. And these are size 0 because I like a tighter gauge for my socks. Okay, my other whip is another Anchors summer shirt. This is a pattern by Petite Knits. I made one last month, I think, and I really like it. It's one that I feel very comfortable in, and I grab quite frequently. If I remember, I'll put a picture up of my other one. I knit that one in like I can't remember the name of the yarn, but it's Drops Belle, and it's like a pink color. It's more of a pink color. So this one I am knitting. When I tried that one on, when I first tried that one on, my first one, I thought, I love this, but I wish I had one that is a more neutral color to go with my summer wardrobe. Is quite, like, my bottoms, you know, I have like a tan color pair of bottoms that are cropped bottoms. I have a couple of pairs of cropped olive green or olive green linen long pants. I was trying to think, what do I wear a lot in the summer? And then I thought, okay, so now I need a neutral color to be able to wear with it. So I'm knitting it out of this almond rose again, which is the main color for my Seaborn tee. I honestly don't know why this is called almond rose, because it's not pink at all. It looks like, it just looks like a more natural beigey color, but it's called almond rose. So I'm not really sure. Okay, so let me tell you a little story about how I ended up getting back to the Anchors, knitting another Anchors summer shirt. So I found this pattern called, did I bring it? Did I bring it out? Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. I found this pattern called Knotting Heel. Let me show you. Isn't that cute? Okay. So I thought, oh, I'm going to knit this, and I'm going to use that pink colored Drops Belle to do the contrast yoke. So she has 2 different cast on methods for this, and this is a free pattern, but she has 2 different cast on methods, and I did both. The first time I did one, It's like a tubular cast on. And I know I just got done saying that I don't like doing tubular cast-ons, but when you're doing a tubular cast-on for the neck, it's a much smaller circumference, so it's not quite as stressful. It's easier to keep your stitches from twisting. So I did the tubular one that she called for first, and I got done with it, and I'm like, there is no way this is gonna fit over my head. So then I thought, okay, I'm ripping this out, and I'm just gonna do a regular long tail cast-on. I don't know why I thought that would make a difference, because tubular cast-ons are more flexible. But I thought, well, maybe I don't know. I'm going to try it. So let me tell you, let me find the cast-on number and okay. All right. So the cast-on stitches for sizes 1 through 3, which I think I was knitting size 3. Size 3 is like a 40-inch bust. Was 64 stitches. To put things in perspective, my Anchor's tee is a 96 cast on, 96 stitch cast on. So 64 stitches, 96 stitches. I cast it on, I joined in the round, and I looked at this thing and I was like, there's no way that's gonna fit over my head. That wouldn't even fit over a baby's head, like a child's head. And because it's a cotton yarn, there's no stretch to it either. Like, I mean, there is some, but it's very minimal stretch. And I thought, what am I doing? Am I misreading this? Like, I got on their project pages and I was looking through all the projects and I was trying to figure out if I was just like being stupid, you know, because lately I have been all off. Like, I've been questioning my knitting so much lately. And I didn't see anyone say anything about it. I don't think there were a ton of projects on there. But I decided I wasn't going to mess around with that. I was not going to mess around. I've been messing around with my Ingrid sweater by Petite Knits, trying to figure out all that stuff with the sleeve decreases. And I thought, I don't want another pattern that I have to think too much about. Because if I cast on 64, or if I cast on more neck stitches, that's going to throw off the color work yoke, and I don't want to have to calculate all that stuff and figure all that out. So I decided not to knit that sweater. If any of you have ever knitted it, it's Notting Hill, and the pattern designer is Caroline Hegwer. Let me know if you, it's a fairly new pattern. It's from 2020. So anyway, after that I thought, well, what could I knit with this Drops Belle? And then I thought, you know what, I'm just sticking to the tried and true. I'm sticking to the Ingrid sweater, the Ingrid sweater is the one I don't like. I'm sticking to the Anchor summer shirt because I've already knitted one. I don't even have to swatch because I know the Drops Belle, you know, the gauge that it gives me, and I know that it fits me. And I can just knit the size I knit last time and I will be happy with it. So that's what I'm doing. I really wanted to try a different pattern, but at the same time I was just thinking that's kind of stupid because I like this pattern and to me it's a very classic look and it will go with a lot of my clothing. So that's what made me go with this one. Now, the last time I knit this, I'm pretty sure I cast it on a size 3, and then I ended up having to adjust the yoke because it was looking too big. So this time and that's another advantage of knitting patterns that you've already made before, because you make your adjustments the first time, and then as long as you make note of it, which I'm getting better with because I have a knitting journal now, then you know when you go to make it the second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever time, you know how to adjust it to fit your body the way that you like it. And so so I knew this time to cast on the size 2, and I'm doing it in the US 5 needles. And yeah, I'm just on the last ribbing section on the yoke, and then after this I will start, I think there's a little bit of a raglan increase if I remember correctly from last time, and then use split for the sleeves and just knit the body. I actually really like this pattern. I'm not a huge fan of ribbing, however, this 1x1 ribbing, I've been practicing. So okay, I always get the two names mixed up. There's English style and continental. So I learned how to knit with the flicking method. So holding the working yarn in my right hand. But I'm much faster when I knit, is it continental, where I manipulate the yarn with my left hand. And so the only time I would get hung up is with purling, because when I would try to purl with my left hand, my purl stitches were sloppy and they weren't as tight, and they just were very inconsistent. So over the winter, I thought, well, the only way I'm going to get better at that is if I practice. So I would practice doing that, and it's gotten a lot better, and I've learned how to tension that yarn in my left hand, and how to kind of like give it a little tug while I'm doing the purl. And so I feel like I'm still not as consistent with my purl stitches as I would be when I'm using my right hand to manipulate the yarn, but it's getting better. And so I don't know, I'm pretty happy with it. But because of that, this ribbing is going so much faster. Manipulating the yarn with your right hand when you're purling, especially because when I'm knitting, I don't throw, I just kind of like catch. Okay, so it's really fast when I knit, but when I purl, I actually have to throw the yarn, so I'm actually letting go of the needle, the right hand needle, and manipulating the yarn to the front. So I don't know if this is making sense. I'm sure it probably is, because you guys are knitters, so you probably know what I'm talking about. But I'm able to do the 1x1 ribbing quite easily and quite consistently using, is it continental? Is that when you use your left hand to manipulate the yarn? Yeah. So I'm excited. I know this isn't going to take very long to do, because my first one, I think I made it in 2 weeks. And I really actually, it's kind of, this shirt to me, it's reminding me of the ranunculus. I have made 3 of the ranunculus sweaters, and I really enjoyed the process, and those went really, really fast. And that's how it is with this shirt as well. It's going really fast, and I'm really enjoying the process. And it's not even anything fancy, but I'm not finding that I'm getting bored. And I think that might be part of it, is because it is more of a cropped, but I don't make mine super cropped. As I already said, I'm not a fan of super cropped. I think they look nice over dresses, but I'm not going to wear them then over pants, and I want to be able to wear this with pants. So but another thing is the short sleeves. When you're not having to knit a long sleeve, that makes things go much faster as well. Okay, so I just want to talk about 3 future knits that I plan on casting on probably fairly soon. Probably fairly soon. The first one I have made in the past, it is the Tip Top Tank by Maker. I will put a picture here. Now, when I made this last time, I made it a size too big. I followed the instructions for like the chest, the bust and stuff, and what size I should knit, and it was way too big, so I ended up ripping that out and using that yarn for my Seaborn tee. So I had knitted in the same color, which I really like this color. I'm just saying, I really like that color. So I want to make another one of those, and I'm going to use the let me find it, the petrol. I bought several skeins of this just because I really like this color, this teal color. It makes my eyes look really blue. My eyes are blue, but it brings out the blue in my eyes, so I thought I'll make a tank. So I'm going to make it using the petrol. This is Drops Belle as well, and I already know my gauge with this, so that'll be good. I know I just need to go down a size. And on the pattern, I printed that pattern out, and I'm pretty certain that I circled the size I made, so I should be able to just look at that and know I need to make a size smaller. That is what I'm hoping anyway. So that is what I'm actually going to cast that on probably this week, and that is a free pattern. The other garment that I want to make is the Salty Air the Salty Air tee by Samantha Gurin. I first heard about this from the ladies on the Fruitful Hands, and that was a while ago that they had talked about it. And ever since then, you know, I added it to my favorites on Ravelry right away, and then I've been thinking I want to cast that on. And I'm actually going to use the yarn that a sweet viewer sent me, this Pearl Soho linen quill. This is the honey pink colorway. So she sent me 3 skeins, but I brought 2 out to show, and it's not going to take more than 2 skeins. It's a fingering weight sweater, and it has really pretty lace detail in it, and I want to make it to wear over dresses. That is the intention of that. Now this honey pink is going to be a color I can only wear in the summer when I'm tan, because when I'm not tan, it is going to make me look super washed out. But I held it up to me like when I was looking in the mirror, and I thought, oh yeah, that looks okay right now because I have a tan. Like, and I will it's still early in the season, so I will be even more tan by the time I actually get this made. I mean, not that it really makes a difference, but I do, like, aren't we affected by what we wear? Things that we wear make us feel differently. That's why, like, if you don't feel good in what you're wearing, then you're probably not going to feel good about yourself. And I don't think that's shallow. I think that's just that as we age, we know what we feel good in, what makes us feel more confident, what makes us feel more comfortable in our bodies. And so certain colors make me feel more comfortable. And like I said, this one's going to work fine when I'm in the summer when I have a tan, but I would probably wear this in the winter as a layering piece, which I think I would be able to do with maybe, like, actually I think that would be really nice to wear it with a pair of jeans, or even over a dress and with like a jean jacket or a blazer over top of it. So I think it'll be versatile, and it is a very neutral color. So this, again, linen quill in the honey pink color. And so that's going to be also, I'm hoping to cast that on soon as well. I remember when I made that tip top tank, it was a really fast knit. So I don't anticipate it taking a long time to make. And then the last thing I want to make is actually a crochet project, and I'm super excited about this because I started out as a crocheter many years ago. And it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I taught myself how to knit. My grandmother taught me how to crochet, and she also attempted to teach me how to knit I was under 10. I was probably around 8, and I got the crocheting down pat, but the knitting, I didn't. I couldn't coordinate my hands to do everything, you know? So I don't crochet very often anymore. I have my long-standing Dahlia scrap gan that I have shared on this podcast before, that basically is all my squares are made. I just need to seam it together. So I have that project going on. I have a granny square shawl for the prayer shawl ministry at my church. I have that going on, but I usually choose to knit. I feel more relaxed when I knit, although every now and then I get this urge to do a crochet project. And I don't even know, I think I was on Pinterest last week, and this bag popped up in my feed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And this is called the Lines Tote, and it's by Plexsto. It is knit with raffia, which I've never knit with before, and I'm currently trying to source affordable raffia. So if you have ever used raffia before, and you know, I realize it's going to be rough on my hands. Like, I've read up on it. I have found some potential sources for it, but I haven't pulled the trigger on any of those purchases. Is it Wool in the Gang? Well, I think it's Wool in the Gang has a raffia yarn, but it is extremely expensive. I don't want extremely expensive. So if you have any economical like sources for raffia, or if you've ever knit with or crocheted with it before, let me know down below. I did find on Amazon, I found a like a big spool of it, but it's cotton. Usually raffia, I've always thought of it as paper, and I think that's what the majority of it is, but this that I found on Amazon is cotton raffia, which is kind of appealing because I feel like it might be a little bit more durable. And it was 300 and some yards for $11. So I would need, I think, 2. I would really only need about 1 and maybe a bit more from the second. But then I thought, oh, I could crochet myself a sun hat if my hands aren't in excruciating pain after crocheting with it. Because I know that when I was reading the reviews for all the different kinds of raffia that I was looking for, that was the main complaint, that it is hard on the hands. So I realized that going into it. But I just love this bag so much. I think it's so beautiful. She has several bags on her Ravelry store. If you're interested in that, go check it out. I will link that down below. But I just think it is so beautiful. I think it would be nice for carrying, books. Not a lot of books, but like a book and maybe like my water bottle or my sketch and watercolor stuff when I go outside to do that. So yeah, that is my plan. And I would like to cast all 3 of these things on fairly soon so that I could actually have them for the summer, because oh my goodness, it's May 30th. June 1st is on Thursday. That's just, I can't believe it. Okay, so now I want to talk about a couple different podcasts. And I had mentioned in one of my previous podcasts, much earlier in the spring, I had asked if anyone was interested in a spring/summer shirts episode, like me pulling one together, kind of like I have one for shawls. I have one for Advent. I can't remember. It would be like a special episode. And I had a lot of people interested in that, but I've run out of time. And I've also realized that there are so many people who have already done that kind of a video that I don't really need to do one. There's a lot out there for people to look at, and I've watched several of them. But just over the last couple of days, I've watched 2 from The Woolly Worker. I think she's based out of Scotland, I'm pretty sure. And I want to go back and check out her other podcasts. She doesn't have many. I think she has like 9 or 10 episodes. But just from the 2 that I watched, like her special episodes, I feel like she's probably somebody I'm going to enjoy watching, and I'm going to kind of click with her projects and just the way that she, carries herself and speaks and what she talks about and stuff. But I'm going to go check out her other episodes, but I have watched her 10 shirts to knit this spring episode, and also 10 camisoles / sleeveless tops to knit this summer. And I'll link both of those videos down below. But yeah, I found some potentials on those lists that let's be honest, I'm probably not going to get around to that because I already have 3 patterns that I want to start right away. But I just thought I'm going to share those because I didn't get around to putting out a video specific to that topic. So I'm going to share that because I just recently watched that and I thought it was good. Okay, and then there is a podcast that's a newer podcast, and I found this podcast several weeks ago, and it is Josie Joe Creates, and Josie is the podcaster who films this, and she is a young Christian mother and wife and homemaker, and that really resonates with me. And I watched all of her episodes. I started at her most recent one and I worked my way backwards. She's super sweet. She is really sweet. There are just some people that you just know that if you knew them in real life, you would be friends. And I feel that way with her. I don't even know her. But I'm just saying, I feel like if we were like close, geographically close, that we would be friends. So yeah, I highly recommend that you check her out, especially if all of those things that I just mentioned are appealing to you. She's also just, she's very calming, and she's conscientious as far as, not being overindulgent. It's hard because, knitting can be an expensive hobby, right? I've talked about this before. And I have a lot of yarn. I have a lot of yarn that I've purchased over the years. And there was a point in my knitting journey where I didn't really think too much. I just, if I liked it, I bought it. And I've changed over the last probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years, to where and this is not just in knitting, it's in general in my life, but where I think more before I buy. And I'm pretty certain that she is also like that, and I appreciate that. I feel like I resonate with those. I like watching podcasts of all different kind, but whenever it's encouraging to watch podcasters that aren't afraid to use more economical yarns, because sometimes that is what makes the most sense for your budget. You know what I mean? And I understand that, you know, okay, so this is where maybe it's a little bit controversial, but you know, some people it's very important for them to use all ethically made, sustainable yarns, so they're not going to feel comfortable with knitting with most commercial yarns. And I understand that. Unfortunately, most of the time when that's the case, those yarns cost a lot more, so they're not as accessible to everyone. But I have noticed with people who knit with those kind of yarns, they are just, it's not important to them to just produce and produce and produce. You know what I mean? What's important is they look at their wardrobe and they think, what am I missing, and what do I need to complete, you know, what garments do I need, or what accessories do I need? And then they knit those things. The podcaster I'm thinking of the most is, oh shoot, I've talked about her in the past, now I'm trying to think. The White Cottage. I'm going to link her down below. Lenny. I'm sorry if you're watching and I'm just having a complete like blank of my brain. So I really enjoy her podcast. I've recommended it in the past. And for her, sustainably produced yarns are important to her. And she looks for a lot of local things. She's from Germany. So she tries to get yarns that are produced closest to her, because then, you know, there's less impact on the environment that way. But she's also not like buying a ton of yarn and just for her it seems more of like, let me see what I need, let me fill the gaps in my wardrobes, and then she's willing and able to invest a little bit more in her yarn because of that. And I could be totally wrong, so if you're watching this and that's not your I'm sorry, I might be stepping out on a ledge with this. So I completely respect that. But like on the other hand, I also know that a lot of people have limited budgets, and so it's not always easy to buy yarn that's more sustainable, because that yarn is typically more expensive. And so I like to watch both kinds of podcasts. I think that there is usefulness out of both approaches, and I would say I probably do a mixture. You know, like I remember I tried to do a no nylon. I tried multiple no nylon socks, and they all had holes in them within several wears. Like, I think I knit 3 different kind out of 3 different no nylon socks, and I thought, I was just like, this is a waste of my time and money. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I just have decided I am not knitting socks unless they have nylon in them, because that's not that important to me that I'm going to spend time knitting socks and then they're just going to get holes in them right away. But I mean, I also understand that I don't want to just be irresponsible with my purchasing and my use of resources. So I think it's hard sometimes to find a balance And I think that maybe probably one of the hardest things about that is the financial barriers that are there. And so I think that it's important to acknowledge that and just kind of respect it. And it's nice to use like more expensive yarn. That's fun and it's a nice experience. But then there's honestly nothing wrong with using commercially made yarns either. You know, I think they both have their own place. I hope that made sense. And like, I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying that it's good to look all around and then do what feels comfortable for you or what works for you. Because as we've talked about before, you know, it would be irresponsible for me, and I think this is where I've changed a lot in my yarn purchasing. It would be irresponsible for me just to continue purchasing a bunch of yarn without giving thought to how it's going to be used. So, I hope that makes sense, and I hope I didn't step on any toes because that wasn't my intent at all. And I really wish I could remember the name of the... Oh, I have this alarm on my watch. I have this cheap watch from Walmart that I don't know how to set. And I somehow turned an alarm on. And it's been going off every day. It went off Sunday during church. And that was the first time it had gone off, so I had no idea how to shut it off. So I'm like pushing all 4 buttons, trying to get it turned off, and I finally got it turned off. And then I need to figure out how to turn the alarm off totally. Oh my goodness. You would think I'd be able to figure out a cheap, what is it, Armatron? It's not even a fancy watch. Oh my goodness. Anyway, all right, I think I've talked enough for today, and I've probably talked way more than I thought I would. When I go to edit this, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more footage than I anticipated I would in the first place. But yeah, thank you for joining me, and I will hopefully see you soon, and hopefully next time I talk to you I'll have some of those other projects casted on. And again, if you have any experience working with raffia, please let me know, because I really want to make that bag so badly. And I might just end up ordering that stuff off of Amazon because it is a really good price, and it got pretty good reviews, and I was looking at the photos of people who had made stuff with it, and I really liked the way that it looked knitted up. And I think a 100% cotton would probably be a bit more sturdy than the paper raffia. I could be wrong, because I do like a sturdy bag. I don't want like a floppy, really drapey bag. You know, I like my sweaters drapey. I don't like my tote bags drapey. And yeah, so I will be back when I'm back. It's hard to tell this time of year because, like I said, the gardening is my main priority, and just being outside, and so I naturally have less knitting time, but I'm always knitting throughout the year. You know, this time of year I do less of it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Oh, thank you for your donations through Ko-fi, whatever it's called. There are several of you who are doing recurring monthly donations. I really appreciate that. That means so much to me. But thank you for everyone who has donated through there. And if you enjoyed my video and you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe if you desire, and also give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And I will talk to you guys all soon.